The Rough Country front sway bar disconnects for 2.5 inches of lift are for those of you that have a 2007 to 2018 JK with right around 2.5 inches of lift that are looking for an adjustable and easy to disconnect front sway bar end link. These are going to be a 2 out of 3 wrenches because there's a little bit of drilling into the frame to do. You have to install a bracket up on the frame here that holds the sway bar and the end link up out of the way when you have them disconnected. And again, you do have to do some drilling there, but we're going to show you how to do it. Really not a huge deal, and I think most of you are still going to be very comfortable doing this in your driveway, no problem. So the whole point of a quick sway bar disconnect is that you can easily disconnect those sway bar end links to give you maximum articulation off-road. You want your sway bar to be connected on the road because that helps with body roll, it helps with control of your vehicle, especially if you have a lifted vehicle. You definitely want those sway bars disconnected when you're driving on the road, but they limit that articulation off-road, so being able to easily disconnect them is a good thing. Now you can of course disconnect your factory sway bar end links or any number of aftermarket end links that come with your lift kit. Even if they're not quick disconnect, you just need tools, and that makes it much more of a process and a project to disconnect them. These ones, like most other quick disconnects, you just pull a pin, swing them up out of the way, and you're ready to go. Now, of course, if you have a Rubicon, you're not going to need something like that. You're going to have that electronic sway bar disconnect in place, so don't worry about it. But for those of you that don't, this is going to be a really nice way to get the maximum out of your suspension, especially if you have a lift kit when you are in an off-road situation. Now, these are going to be nice because they are adjustable, and you want your sway bar to be at a certain angle when you are driving on the road. So you want this arm of the sway bar to essentially be parallel to the ground when the suspension is halfway through its travel. Now, to make it a little bit easier, most people will just aim it up just a couple of degrees. They're not going to do all of the math because there's a little bit of slop in there, but ultimately the adjustability is going to be a nice thing so you can get the exact length that you need, because every Jeep sits different. Even if you have 2.5 inches of lift, if you have a heavy front bumper and a winch, the front end's gonna sit a little bit lower and you can get away with a different size end length. So again, that adjustability is going to be really nice. Now, other than the adjustability, this does have the bracket up on the frame that I talked about, and some of the other versions of quick disconnect out there on the market are not going to have that, and that's a feature that I do really like. Other than that, this is going to be very, very simple. You have a tie rod end style joint up at the top here, a rubber bushing at the bottom here. There are no grease fittings, nothing fancy, just very, very simple. And the idea there is to keep costs down a little bit. These are going to run you right around $70 for the pair, where ones that maybe have some grease fittings or some other features built into them are going to be a little bit more expensive. So like I said, easy install here. I am going to go 2 out of 3 wrenches because of the little bit of drilling involved. So let me show you how to get that done. For this install, we used a couple of different sockets, a 13, 18, and 19 millimeter, driven by either our 3/8 electric impact or 3/8 pneumatic impact. We also used a 14, 18, and 19 millimeter wrench and a screwdriver, but you could also use an awl or a set. Finally, we needed our drill with a 17/64 drill bit. So like I said before, this is going to be a very easy 1 out of 3 wrenches for the installation. There is that little bit of drilling that we talked about, but we'll get to that in a moment. We're going to start with uninstalling our factory sway bar end link, and that process is very, very simple. Now, we have our Jeep up on the lift here. That's really just to make it easier for me to get in there and for you to see what we're doing. However, you can very easily do this with the Jeep on the ground with all the tires on. These are very easy bolts to get to. So all we're going to do is remove this lower bolt and this upper nut right here and get the sway bar end link out of the way. So for the top of the end link, we're going to be removing this nut on this side, but there actually isn't a bolt to remove. This is a tie rod end style joint at the top of the factory sway bar end link. So we have a 19 millimeter wrench. We're actually going to go ahead and hold the stud. They put a little bit of a flat spot on there for us so we can get a wrench on that. Otherwise, when you spin this, the ball inside that tie rod end joint can just spin and you'll never actually get it loose. If you need to, if this isn't working for you, there's also an Allen head recess inside the end of the stud. So what you can do is put a wrench on the nut, put a Allen key through here and hold on to it. So that's just another way of holding the stud. This way works a little bit better in my opinion. So that's what we're gonna do. Now the first step in the installation is to assemble the sway bar end link, and before we actually put the tie rod end on the post here, we're going to install our jam nut. So we'll thread that into place. And what that's going to do is allow us to adjust the length of the sway bar end length, then tighten down the jam nut to make sure nothing is going to move on us in the future. Get that threaded on, then we can thread our tie rod end on. And Rough Country recommends that you adjust these roughly to about 10 inches from the center of the stud to the center of the hole here. And that's going to be a good starting point for most of you, but depending on your lift and your suspension setup, you're going to fine tune it from there. But again, we'll get started like that. So the next thing we're going to do is get this installed in the Jeep. We have our flange nut here. We're going to put the tie rod end through the sway bar end. And then we can get this tightened down. This is going to work just like our factory one did. We're going to hold the stud on the inside here and then tighten it down. The next part of the installation is to install a small bracket up here on the frame that's going to hold the sway bar and the sway bar end link when it's disconnected. So in order to figure out where that should go, we're going to swing the sway bar and the end link up out of the way, pretty much there. And then you'll see where the sway bar end link makes contact with the frame, and that's where our bracket is going to go. So as you can see, we already have a couple of holes drilled here from a previous installation. If you don't, all you're going to do is hold your bracket up. You're going to mark your holes, use a center punch and a 17/64 inch drill bit to drill those holes, and then the screws that come with your kit are self-tapping, so you can just run those right in there with the bracket in place. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. The last step in the installation is to install this pin on the axle side of the sway bar end link. This is the piece that allows you to quickly connect and disconnect that sway bar end link. So we're going to get it bolted into place, and then we'll get the end link connected. You'll use a large Phillips head screwdriver or a punch or an awl in this end to hold the whole stud from spinning, and a 19mm socket on the other side to tighten it down. Finally, we can attach our sway bar end link onto our quick disconnect post simply by sliding it over top and then using the included pin to attach it so it's not going to pop off while we're driving. So to disconnect this quick sway bar disconnect, all you need to do is remove the pin, which will allow you to pull the bottom part of the sway bar off of the axle side pin, and then you can swing it up into the storage location. And you can use the pin to hold the sway bar in the storage location. To reconnect the sway bar, you just need to remove the pin so you can pull the sway bar out of its storage location and swing it down into place. Push it over top of the stud on the axle side and then push the locking pin back into place. So if you're looking for a no-frills quick disconnect for your front sway bar, I would recommend this option from Rough Country, and you can find it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.